Hi there, welcome to the Accidental Pop Star here on YouTube. If you are wondering what this channel is all about, I quite simply interview pop stars, both past and present, about their time in the music industry. Was having a #1 hit, being on top of the pops, and going on the front cover of smash hits, everything that it was cracked up to be. If you're wondering why I interview pop stars, I was once a member of 1990s boy band Bad Boys Inc., signed to A&M Records. We had relative success all over the world before we just quietly filtered away at the beginning of 1995. For this episode, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the show Michelle Heaton from Liberty X. Liberty X were formed as part of the ITV talent show Pop Stars. They went on to have huge success, not just in the UK, but all over Europe as well. Michelle's story is one of bravery, of courage, and incredible strength. And I really hope you enjoy her story. Welcome to the Accidental Pop Star, Michelle Heaton from Liberty X. Hi Michelle, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for jumping on. I'm delighted that you're here. I'd like to fire straight into when you guys first formed. When you formed, did you seek any sort of independent advice from anybody outside a record company, a management company, or even a TV production company in terms of signing a contract and what to expect?
Well, the answer is no, quite simply. So Liberty X were formed on the Pop Stars TV show. And when we hadn't won, and hearsay were the 5 winners and we were the 5 losers, or rejects, as they like to call us back then, we had calls coming in to ITV about how they wanted to manage us or somebody wanted to sign us up. So we had actually a few offers on the table before we even met with a manager or got any further advice. So the advice that we were only getting was very brief from the TV show. They didn't really want any hand of it. That it was all new to them. You know, consequently, since us signing and becoming quite big, all of these reality shows from then on, every contestant was contractually obliged to that TV show or to Psycho or whoever was managing that thing, because we slipped out, right? They had no intention of the other 5 being a band. So the only advice then what we went on to get was when we were introduced to our manager. And the reason that we chose this specific manager, after having meetings with Simon Cowell and Pete Waterman, they both wanted to manage us. And they said things in the meeting that perturbed us. One wanted to kick Kelly out and just have the 4 of us. And the other one wanted to turn us into steps, which I was quite delighted with, but not so much with the boys. That wasn't their visual for what the band was going to be about. And it was actually Lorraine Kelly. So Lorraine Kelly, we were on her TV show and we sang as the 5 losers, and we told her about all these opportunities and people coming our way. And we were a little bit blindsided. And she says, I know the best person. And so she introduced us to a guy called Gary Wilson, who owned Hyperactive, who was at the time managing Worlds Apart, which you will know around your era. Very, very successful globally, and especially in Europe. And also, you know, Brother Beyond, and he had 3T. And so we went with him. And then I suppose all the advice was from Gary. And to this day, he still books Liberty X gigs.
Does he? Brilliant. How much creative say did you have when you guys first formed, or did you feel almost obliged to fit a formula?
Had we gone with one of the other managers, we would have definitely had to fit the narrative of their formula, what their idea was a band. We were very fortunate. We got signed to V2 Records, which was Richard Branson, an indie label. So we were their first pop artist, being, you know, the 2 major artists, Tom Jones and Stereophonics. So we had quite a bit of creative input, actually. You know, Kelly and Tony wrote off a single, Thinking It Over. And then it was more of, you know, from then it was definitely a 50-50 situation. We were one of the lucky bands that got a lot of input. And yeah, so we were quite fortunate with that. We would usually sit in the A&R department and they would play us ideas, the singles that had swept through their door, and we wanted to songwrite quite a lot. So a lot of the album tracks were actually written by a lot of us. We did a couple of camping trips where we would write, where you go to an isolated place, usually in the foothills of Scotland, and write songs.
Having released, let's talk about the records when you released them. So, having released Thinking It Over, which did just fine, and then Doing It, again, did fine, but I'm guessing that it wasn't what it was quite hoped or expected. So, for your third single, did you already start to feel pressure to have a big hit?
Yeah, absolutely. The album was coming together. We knew that we had, a three option album deal, so it was quite a big deal. But when Doing It didn't do very well, it was almost a case of, okay, see you later, almost. Those
Really?
discussions were talked about, and they were scrambling, do we have the next single to really catapult them? And we didn't have the right one. And we probably, I'm sure they would have chose one and released it, and we would have went with one of the album tracks. But then I actually found Just a Little.
Did you?
So I was in a studio session with Dane Bowers. Well, it would have been, except he never showed up, right? So that's Dane all over. And we were going to write a song with this producer. And while I was in there, I thought I might as well give it a go, even though I was quite new to it all. And while we're in there, I wasn't any good, really. But he played me Just a Little, which was written and demoed by Michelle Heaton. And he said it was supposed to be for Anastasia, and she just passed on it.
Really?
Would I take it to my A&R man? And when you hear a song
Yeah.
and you get that feeling that, oh my good God, this song is gonna be huge. Like I didn't know much about what music worked in the industry at the time because it was so eclectic. There was so much going on. There was a lot of indie, there was a lot of rock, there was also a lot of pop and a lot of like steps like bands. But you just knew that single was different, it really was. So I took it to the A&R man and we played it, and that was that.
Was there almost a sense of relief?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We had just become pop stars. We had just become successful. Thinking it over, although it only got to number five, was actually our second biggest selling single.
Sure.
So Thinking It Over was huge. We released it on a white label with Wide Boys, and Artful Dodger. Obviously, it was co-produced by Artful Dodger. So it was a huge hit, especially in the clubs and remixes as well. How do we then emulate that and have a third single, since the second one didn't do as well, match that success? And the record label knew, the A&R man knew, our management knew. We just knew it was going to be huge. So actually, the record label threw a load of money into it, a 2-day video shoot, and we hired a bank in bank in London, where we did a heist, and we had custom made outfits, which is from a lady who is now an Oscar winner for her outfits. And so it was just like there was no expense spared. It wasn't until I think we did that video did I truly believe that we could be the next big band. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you think that, because obviously the record itself is fantastic, it's brilliantly produced, but did you think that it needed a big PR drive? Because a lot of bands, especially in and around our time, needed a PR drive behind the music as well. Because obviously, as we've all come to discover, the production of the music far outweighs the image. So, was there a big PR drive, or was the music just good enough to stand alone?
It's very different. I think nowadays music can stand alone without any PR drive
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's so accessible on
yeah,
very different platforms. Back then, it was all about the PR drive. Even if it was going to be, even if we had that massive hit in our hands, without anybody knowing or hearing it, it was never going to hit.
sure.
So the PR drive to us back then looked like going around every regional radio station. We were almost living in a car, staying in like desperate hotel rooms. It wasn't all glitz and glamour at all. Getting on each other's nerves, eating loads of crap on the road. You know what it's like. We would do every local TV station, every news station. There'd be times where we'd fly over to Germany to do a nightclub gig, do a red eye back home to do CDUK, SNTV Live, and then later that night at midnight it would be GAY.
Yeah.
That was what it looked like. It was non-stop. Every single was about a 6 to 8 week period where you dropped a new single. And then after just a little drops, we dropped the album. And then we still had two more singles to drop.
Can I ask, just before I ask you about the sort of the emotions about getting to number one, did you know what your midweek was for it? Do you,
Yes, yeah, we knew what our midweek was, and it was looking good. It
okay,
was close. So
okay,
back then it was all, singles sales were huge.
yeah,
They were absolutely massive. You had to sell at least 300,000 to get anywhere in the top five.
yeah,
And because they were selling at that amount, and there was so much good music back then, and the PR drives were all big. There was loads of road shows, there was Smash Hits tour, we did all of that. It was very, very close to the bone, but we kind of knew. We knew that we almost had it, and something horribly would go wrong if it didn't make it.
okay.
And on the Sunday, it was exactly how you would imagine. You don't really find out until the Sunday, but you do find out before the top 40 is announced.
Yeah.
But the record label and management kept that from us.
Okay.
So we were doing on that. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were doing Soccer Six, which is a charity football matches that were held all throughout the summer, and we had to gather, and I'm sure it was Scott Mills, but I could be wrong, on the top 40, and we were on the line, and we genuinely didn't know. We had a great idea, but we genuinely did not know. And then he played number two. I think it might have been Ronan Keaton. I could be wrong. And so we knew it was us. So we were in the middle of this pitch with loads of other really famous celebrities and pop stars around us. We all playing these matches, a huge stadium. And we just went absolutely hell for leather. Like we were number one. And in front of people like that, it was really like what dreams are made of. It really was. I know it sounds cliche, but wow, like we got a number one selling single. And so we knew we'd be on top of the pops. We knew we'd be on all these TV shows because you never know how it's going to work out.
I remember we also we had a good indication from our midweek,
Mhm.
but we had a feeling that the reverse would happen with us. We felt that all of our fans would buy the single in the first 2 or 3 days, and then there'd be a bit of a drop off in the sort of the days leading up to the end of the week. So we kind of guessed that we'd have a top 20 hit, and we were in the tour van driving somewhere on a motorway somewhere in England. And when you get the indication that you've got a hit record, that your first single has charted, the emotions are unbelievable. I think it's something that people that are fortunate to be in our positions, you never ever forget, do you?
No, no, you never forget. And I can't make head nor tail of the music industry at the moment.
Yeah.
A single wherever it goes in is not necessarily the highest position now.
Right,
There
right.
really isn't that excitement or thrill of knowing whether you've made number one,
Yeah,
because there's only ever been a few records, a handful of records in the 90s and noughties, really,
yeah,
that started off at one and might go back to one.
yeah.
But whatever your first position is, that was the ultimate one.
Let me talk about sort of the mechanics behind the scenes and how you guys made a living and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to go into details because obviously that's not for public consumption. But what I would like to ask is, did you pay yourselves a wage? How did it all work? Did you get an advancement from your record company? How did that all work for you guys?
Yeah, we received an advancement for the record company. I couldn't even tell you what it was now, to be honest. It's not here now, and we paid ourselves a wage from that
Okay.
every month, and that's
Yeah.
how we did it. And then anything extra would go into this pot, and we'd pay ourselves a wage. But
Okay.
obviously, as the years went on and success dwindled and advances weren't as much, we weren't getting booked for certain things anymore, then obviously, that went down. And I suppose it really was as cold as when Liberty X finished and we decided to part ways, there was nothing. There
Yeah.
was nothing left
Yeah.
in the bank. And and I was a bit of a spender. I was a big spender. So the only thing I had invested a little bit of my money in was one property, but the girls were much better than I was. I just spent away. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether I was naive. I thought it was never going to end, but I just wanted to enjoy myself and handbags, shoes, stupid handbags, really, really stupid, massive, big Louis Vuitton carrying cases that actually broke as soon as I used it. It was literally just because I could. Um, God, I remember just going into a BMW garage and seeing a car on the courts, and it was a white BMW, red leather interior, and I just was like, I want that now. And I didn't leave until I got it,
Yeah.
paid cash, and and then obviously depreciated within the second and we drove it off. I have never been that stupid again.
Did anybody not sort of sit you guys down, or did you not ever sit amongst yourselves? Maybe, I don't know, in a quiet moment in a hotel room, away from the glaring eye of the public, and actually think to yourselves, We need to be careful here." Because I remember the lads and I did, because, I'll be quite honest with you, we earned £800 a month. That's
Right.
it. That's all we got. And we were scrimping and scraping. We really were. I was only just about to be able to afford my rent and my bills. Thankfully, everything was taken care of by the record company.
Mhm.
But I do remember sitting down and going, right, we have to be careful. And any big gigs that we got, like I remember we opened the Blackpool roller coaster and we got paid a hefty fee for that, and we never saw it.
Right.
And I used to get really frustrated about stuff like that. And I'm just wondering, did you guys sort of look out for each other when it came to the money you were earning?
I think that those conversations definitely happened, and I just decided to kind of look the other way and kind of spend as I went along, to be honest.
Yeah,
Tony, especially Tony, was really switched on when it came to things like that.
yeah,
Um, but you know what it's like? We owe the record company so much money because of the videos and the
yeah, yeah,
styling, and all of that was great for just a little, but we have to pay it back
sure.
of our pockets. We don't get that money. They take it off what we earn. And if we haven't earned that much, then effectively, we owe them money. So when money comes in, it's gone again. Like what you said, you don't see the big books when the big things are coming in.
Mm,
To be
mm,
honest, it's not until really you're out of a record deal and you start gigging as a band and your management just takes 20%. That's when you see the money,
yeah.
not while you're tied into a record contract.
Do you think you chose the pop star life, or do you think it kind of chose you?
Um, I think I was very clear-minded on what I wanted to achieve from a very young age. So I definitely chose that,
Yeah.
whether they liked it or not. I knew, I mean, I still have imposter syndrome now.
Oh, tell me about it.
I never believed my own hype. I
Yeah.
certainly wasn't full of it. And I did not believe I was the best. I knew I wasn't the best. I knew that I wasn't the best singer, the best dancer, the best anything. I knew I wasn't. I'd be stupid to think that. But I had a drive and I had a passion. And from a very, very young age, even as early as 2 or 3, when Bucks Fizz won with Making Your
Eurovision.
Mind Up, that's my first memory. I had that in my head that that's what I want to do. And that never went or deterred. So I would literally work any job. I'm just from a council estate, and Gates said we had zero money. I didn't do drama or dance school or anything like that. The talent was literally just really, really raw. And I didn't even know if I could make it, but I was determined to do it at all costs. So I just worked any job, paid for a bus to go down to London, turn up with Pineapple Dance Studio or an audition, and I would get knocked back all the time. And then the next time I might get that little bit further and that little bit further. And then I remember there was one audition that I was like in the top 14 to get into Girl Thing, which was a girl band back then. Pumped a lot of money into that. And I didn't get it. But thank God I didn't, because actually the Pop Stars audition was the year later.
Okay.
So I just never stopped trying.
Can I just develop that chat a little bit, Michelle? Because I also suffered from imposter syndrome, and I still suffer from it today.
Mhm.
And it's something that triggers me quite a lot, even though it's been 30 years, it still triggers me now and then. I didn't cope with it very well, I have to be honest. But like you, I was absolutely driven because I was not a singer. I could dance a little bit. It didn't help that our producer wouldn't allow us to sing on the tracks, which just compounded this
Wow.
imposter syndrome for me. How did you cope?
Mhm. It was very much evident on me, and I still have that now, like you say, especially when we do gigs.
Yeah,
I was very well aware throughout the band and when we're in recording studios. You'll go to a recording studio in the morning or early afternoon, and I'm always the last one there because they use me for whatever's left.
right, okay. You see,
And it's not the band members' fault. It was just the way that the record company wanted to deal with each track. On thinking it over and on doing it, it was very equal. And then Just a Little was our biggest hit. They had a formula, Jessica starts it, Kelly's in there, and Kevin.
yeah,
And that was their module. We've heard this loads of times, especially with S Club. They had that winning formula and they stuck with it. And so I knew my place, and that made me then not less, not so much less talented, but more vulnerable, so that I wasn't able to grow or
yeah,
get better because I knew my worth and it didn't feel good. And I throughout the whole of the Liberty X, I just felt like I was a hanger on, and so and there were times in the band where it was evident that maybe I wasn't as wanted, but I was there. And I was, even the management wanted me to lose weight to fit in with the band, and that was said numerous times. And what I did was eat my feelings. So I was and drink. And so the way I found my place in the band was to be a party girl. And I found that the attention that I so desperately wanted from being a singer wasn't going to come. And so I started to get attention from being somebody who went out all the time and dated all of the pop star boys.
mm,
And so I found that I started to crave that because I wasn't getting noticed in the band for being a performer, that's all I wanted to do. And so I fell into that person in a band, and it wasn't at all wanted from the rest of the band members. But I was in it, and consequently, I think now we look back and without being an absolute big head about it, the band needs that kind of person. But I fell into that, so I didn't fall into being a pop star, but I fell into being that person that the papers picked up on, and with that came just a lot of heartache, obviously. But I thought that that's where I belonged and that's what I deserved to be because I wasn't used as a singer as much.
yeah. I think where I started to become comfortable in my own skin about it, which took me a very long time, even after the band split up, and where I started to accept it, is that I had a role to play.
Mm.
And it didn't matter whether I was singing on the records or not, or if I wasn't the best dancer. I knew I had a role to play in the band, be it behind the scenes, sort of keeping the boys' spirits up, working really hard at our choreography, working hard on our image. At least I felt I
Mm.
was contributing. And I think
Yeah,
that's where I became at peace. I knew I was contributing. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah. It does make sense. It does make sense. I never felt like I was contributing. I felt like I was bringing them down. And that was hard. Yeah, I felt like I just didn't belong. And the only time I've found any peace in that really was I think when we got back together for the big reunion. And I found my own worth, I think,
Yeah.
and realized that I'm a bit older and a bit wiser, and actually, yeah, I worked hard at this. I deserve to be here. And again, the band members never make me feel so much as that I don't belong there. But they had their own roles to play, and I think like exactly what I was feeling, and especially about not being able to sing as much on the tracks or if any leads, just really, really made me turn to other things, which was, going out, partying.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But can I ask you about perfection? Did you always feel pressure to be perfect? Because, and I'm wondering what it did for your mental health as well. And I know you've talked about your struggles. There was a ridiculous amount of pressure placed on us to look great because I always felt we were too image driven and that the musical side to it was always secondary. I think it was tough for us, but I think for you guys, it must be 10 times worse. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think that, we were very much about our music,
Mm,
but then not. Does that make sense? We would
yes.
always pride ourselves that it's all about the music. If
Yeah.
I remember, and everybody would say that it's the music first, image comes second. But it really wasn't about that because I had an immense pressure on myself to be a certain way and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get out of that overeating phase. And I mean, when just a little hit the charts, I was 2.5, 3 stone heavier than I am now, and I'm only 5'3". So that's quite a lot of weight for my height, and it showed. But the more I got labeled the fat one, the more I ate. I'm an addict.
Mm,
I didn't know I was an addict back then, but what does an addict do? It repeats the same things over and over again, expecting different results. And I wanted to change the way that I felt in body and mind. And so at that point, I was an overeater, and then I wasn't, and then I lost weight, and then I would stop eating. I would binge eat. I was then addicted to slimming pills, and then I was too thin. I couldn't win. I was doing all of that because I couldn't find what I was going to be happy with. I had no idea. I mean, it's only now at 45 where I'm happy with my body and content.
yeah.
Um, I never was happy with myself. And it's primarily, because, well, I suffer from addiction and I've got a lot of mental problems, but because of people were telling me I wasn't perfect and I wasn't the way that I meant to be. I was the fat one. I was labeled that quite a few times for people inside the camp as well as the press. And then when I was skinny, I was not eating, and when I was drunk, I was, an alcoholic, and I was a slag. I got called a slag in newspapers and magazines because I was dating certain people and having fun. And I mean, gosh, like I was doing nothing, no, but no other 25-year-olds was able to do. I was doing exactly the same things as them, but it was written about. So it just seemed 10 times worse.
Yeah, of course. Um, did your family rally round you? Could they see what was going on?
Oh, I think like whilst we're in a bubble, they get in a bubble as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think I kind of made that bubble for my family and friends early on by treating them and spending lots of money on them because I had money at my disposal.
Yeah.
Um, and I created this safe bubble for them that maybe they couldn't see what was actually going on with me. First of all, I wouldn't have said anything anyway, but also because they were liking this bubble that I created for them myself, and I like to see them happy. So they're through rose-tinted glasses almost. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
that's not a horrible thing.
No, no.
It wasn't because they were greedy. I made that happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And let me just compare it. It's nowhere near on the levels of what was happening to you, nowhere near it. But my mum and dad would get hate mail from fans of other bands, and my mother would be distraught. And if there was a couple of sort of unflattering newspaper reports, which predominantly only came really from the press in Scotland, it
Mm.
would really, really upset them. And it
Mhm.
came to the point where I had to say to them, don't read them. If anything comes to the house, just put it in the bin. If you're pointed towards a newspaper article, don't read it. Just leave it all alone. But I
Yeah.
think they found it. I think they found that side of it really difficult, and it's something that I kind of regret that they kind of went through that. Because you want
Yeah,
to be protective of your parents as much as you want to be protective of yourself.
yeah, absolutely. I remember there was one time where I had a cameraman take a picture up my skirts,
Yeah, I know.
and there's a picture of me not wearing underwear,
Yeah,
and um, my
absolutely.
legs were open. It wasn't a deliberate thing that the girls do these days. I was wearing a beautiful dress. I just didn't wear any underwear with it because it was showing.
Yeah,
And the next day that was front page of all of the newspapers.
yeah,
And the cameraman, it's actually a picture of a cameraman taking a picture of the cameraman with the camera on my skirt. I mean, that's illegal, right? I
yeah,
mean, if there was no cameras around, what you would do, you'd kick the camera out of his hand and probably hit his
absolutely.
head, right?
Absolutely.
Couldn't do that.
No, of
I'd get
course.
arrested.
Yeah, of
When
course.
he's taking a picture of my skirt. That picture landed on my dad's locker at work because he was a bus driver at the time, and my younger brother, he was at college, and I remember years after them telling me how that affected them so
Yeah.
much, and of course, what guilt.
Mm,
Um, and an innocent moment turns into something that has really affected my daddy and my younger brother because of something that I chose to do. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of guilt with that. And then I suppose recently with my addictions and everything, they've had to read things that they didn't know themselves.
yeah.
Yeah, that's been really tough.
Yeah,
And
I'm so
it,
sorry that happened to you. It's a despicable act. It was a disgusting act, and it was overstepping the boundaries. And I'm
yeah.
so sorry that happened to you. Dearie me. You know, I'm just wondering if during that time, because of these appalling incidents that you had to endure, did the novelty of being a pop star start to wear off?
Yeah, it wasn't until after the band finished, and then we all went on and got married, and I married my first husband, Andy Scott Lee. Um, it wasn't until towards the end of that relationship where it even got worse, where it got way worse, and it was because we both had not been kind to each other, and we both were, I suppose, living almost a single life, even though we were married. And the press were onto us, and every move I made, it was taken and criticized. And at that point, you know, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you say, right, I've decided to become this person, and so give all of my life away. And in one respect, you're right, because I did not choose to be followed to my house, look through my windows, follow me into bathrooms to try and catch me to do something. That's happened quite a lot of times. I've had cameras over, this is before addiction, so nothing was caught. But I had cameras over the toilets in well-known nightclubs trying to catch me doing drugs numerous times. And it was a different kind of harassment
Mm,
through my divorce with Andy.
mm,
And then my now husband, Hugh, he got that too. I met him shortly after me and Angie broke up, and we didn't get together for a couple of months, but he was blamed for our breakup. I hadn't even met him, and he wasn't from this planet. He doesn't work in he's not a celebrity. He's just a really beautiful Irish man, doesn't drink, doesn't want drama. And we hadn't even started going out, but we went out with a few friends one night, and his picture was plastered all over the magazines and newspapers saying that I left Andy for him. And so before we even got to know each other, that's already tarnished. And that was tough for me to break down for him, because I knew I wanted to go out with this person. I could see how good he was, and I had to then work on trying to tell him or show him that it's not always like this, but
mm,
actually it was.
mm. Can I ask you, you mentioned briefly the big reunion. Can I just go back to that?
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind going on that television show? Was there a nostalgic feel to it? Or did you feel after
Yeah,
you guys had gone your separate way, did you think this could be the start of a new beginning for you guys?
we didn't know what it could look like, but it was very exciting. When
Yeah.
Liberty X ended, it was pretty flat. We didn't have a big goodbye concert or a
No.
big
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah.
We were tired. I would have carried on until the bitter end. I think Tony probably would have carried on, and I think Kev would have just done whatever Tony did. But in particular, Kelly was just done with the way that we were behaving, myself and Kevin in particular. And she was right. We were getting drunk all the time, and mistakes were being made. Carelessness was happening, and we were on our second or third record deal. It wasn't looking great. X had just flopped in the charts, our biggest flop, and that was kind of our last kind of big single. And we just one day we came off stage, we were just in Wembley Arena, and we were performing in front of hundreds of thousands of girl guides. It was one of those big massive girl guides
Mm,
gigs,
mm.
that annual thing. And we were just done. And she started the conversation. I think I'm done. I think I'm done. Jessica was getting married. Um, I was with Andy. I was looking at getting married soon. Kelly was looking at getting married soon. We're all thinking about having babies. So it was just like that. I think we had two more gigs to do. One of them was actually with Whitney Houston for a private gig.
Wow.
So one of our last ever shows was that. And then our very last show was a road show where nobody turned up at.
Oh,
It was sad. That was it.
yeah.
So to get the opportunity, big reunion, we went in all it was hard to get all five of us together at one day. We all had families, young kids. We all had at least one kid each at that point. And so to get us all there on the same day with ITV and Kevin Lane and the producers there, down at Potato, we got there, and we knew that they were talking to a few of the bands they've mentioned, maybe Bewitched and Five, who we never really knew because we went on the same circuit with. And they told us what it looked like. It's going to be a reality show, and I think the only thing that perturbed us was how much do we give? How much do they want from us? How personal can it get? Does it need to get? And because the rest of the bandmates are very private, and at that point everybody knew my business,
Mm.
I was obviously like, I'm an open book. I will talk freely about anything. And what the whole Bring Reunion was about was discovering what happened to the bands before, why did it end, and why now. And we had all grown up. A few years had passed. We'd all grown up. I missed it terribly. I was just waiting for one of them to give me a call. Let's do this again anyway. And it so happened to be on this platform. So for me, it was a no-brainer. Tony had already kind of started up his new business, and so he wasn't quite sure whether it was the right thing to do, but ultimately, obviously, we did it, and with the most amazing bands. Apart from Blue, who came on a bit later,
Yeah.
we had never shared the stage with these bands before. 911, like Atomic Kitten. Atomic Kitten were actually really good friends of mine beforehand, but sharing the stage with these pop stars that I had paid to see in the late 90s was pretty awesome. Um, we had the best time in the world, and we didn't take anything for granted. We looked great. We had all got in shape for it. Like I feel like we looked our best we ever did in the band. We had, got our baby bodies back, and we were all at great places, and we were just thirsty. We were thirsty for getting back on that stage. And what I will say about being on stage for me is, even though I suffer from imposter syndrome and I've got self-doubt riddled with it, unfortunately I just see flaws when other people don't, and it's just I do that to myself. I do that to myself. I pull myself down, and I'm working on it. On stage, no matter whether I'm singing the lead or not, on stage I have a mask on, and I can become this person that I ought to be, that I should be in life, full of confidence and just like fight for survival. And I've always had that. That's why I love to be on stage. So when I'm on stage, I feel comfortable. And it's really hard to explain that to people when that's like their opposite idea of fun. but on stage I felt comfortable. So to get that back at that stage of our lives was just incredible. And then, you know, when we had that last show at the, I think it was the Apollo, it was there that we got told this is going on tour.
Yeah.
And we were all in. And then I got pregnant again. Kerry was pregnant at the same time. And then there was a Christmas one. It was just incredible. It really was. And then what it looked like after that for us, it went into the three girls
Yeah.
staying together.
Yeah.
And the boys didn't want to carry it on as a band. It was just for that. And, you know, they've consequently went to be very successful on their own accounts. But we three girls stayed together.
Um, just a couple of more questions. I'll come to those in just a moment, but I've got to react to what you said about being on stage. Um, Believe it or not, with the imposter syndrome, people think that when you go out on stage and you're performing in front of thousands of screaming fans, that you're probably at your most vulnerable. I
Mm,
found being on stage my safe haven. I
me
can't
too.
explain it. I wish I could. I have no idea why, but I just felt it was my safe place. I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I relate. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
And I can't put it into words.
Yeah, right.
Like nobody can touch me.
Yeah, right.
Like right in this moment, as long as I don't make a fool of myself, because I fell many times on stage. Um, but in that moment, it's just us
Yeah.
and and the support of my girls and the boys when we're together, and it's our songs. People are singing our songs back, and we're doing our dance routines, which we know inside and out, and we're always wearing tight leather. And I'm 45, so I mean, my kids would shoot me if I wore leather at home. But on stage, I get away with it. I
Yeah.
get away with being this massive performer, you know, larger than life and like almost slut dropping when I want and get away with it. That's just like it's like freeing because when you are in a band and you're a performer, 9 times out of 10, people don't go, "Oh, well, she didn't do that last time." Like it's not like that. It's our gig and we're performing, and so people just take that as a given that that's what you want to give to the audience, and it feels really, really safe.
We unfortunately have both suffered from life-changing illnesses, you far worse than I have. But what I'd like to ask you is, where did the strength come from for you to be able to come through all your issues? Where did you find the strength?
Oh,
Mine were my children.
mm, I
I had to
think,
recover from my children.
yeah, I think with oh gosh, because there've been so many. I think with like my whole cancer gene and getting my hysterectomy and double mastectomy,
Yeah.
I am very much a person that when there's a problem brought to me, I react.
Hmm.
And sometimes I don't think of the consequences, but I do whatever's best in that moment. I hate dwelling on things. I don't usually take my time on making a decision in certain things, and my health being one of them. And so I made the decision and I did it and I deal with the consequences, whatever they might look like. However, the biggest consequence for my hysterectomy was menopause.
Yeah.
I knew would have happened, but I did not anticipate what was going to happen and how it was going to shape my life. And so dealing with that consequence was life changing. I turned to drinking drugs and I became a full-blown alcoholic. And that's the one thing that I wasn't able to combat myself. I had zero power in it. I thought I did. I thought I could control it. I thought that I had it licked. It was all on me. I'm deciding to do this. I'm deciding to drink. And then over the course of maybe about 5, 6 years, at some point, it was controlling me.
Mm.
I couldn't stop. Only an addict or an alcoholic will understand how that feels to go to a shop to buy vodka knowing you're dying. You don't want to drink it. You do not want to drink it. You want to get better at some point because you know you're dying. You've got your kids and your family and your friends. You know that they're all now distancing themselves. I lost so many friends, and yet you're still drinking. Why? Why? And so that question, why, kept me in that addiction phase for quite some time because I didn't know why. And then I would punish myself. So I would then think I deserved to die. Who wants me? I would push people away. I kind of accepted the fact that this was what my life was meant to be. I'm just going to drink myself to death. Whilst I didn't want to die, I thought this is what's going to happen. So I had almost accepted that.
Mm.
And the only way I recovered was because I had all my husband's just been incredible. 2 years before I got help, he wanted to send me to rehab and had it all set up, and I begged him not to. Um, I begged him not to, and I used the excuse because people will find out and how shameful I would feel. And he agreed to help me try and do it myself. And I was a little bit better for a short while, but very short-lived. And so help was always there. I just had to ask for it.
Mm.
And it was just one day I was just done. Like I knew I was dying. I was in that hospital. They told me that I didn't have long. My liver had onset of jaundice. My pancreas still doesn't work to this day. My skin was see-through and translucent, and I couldn't stop. And I just remember like sighing, and I was at a friend's house, and my friend Katie Price was there, and she was in a great place at that moment. She had just come out the prior, and I asked her, how has she done it? How has somebody like me done this? How is she drinking? And I listened, and then I accepted the help that was always there for me. And about 48 hours after I was in rehab, and I haven't touched drink or drug since, and 4 years in about 2 weeks' time.
Your strength and your bravery is astonishing, and you should be very, very proud of yourself. Which brings me on to your children. Have you breached the subject with them yet that their mum was a famous pop star?
Oh my God. How can you avoid that, right? Okay. So I mean they've always known. I don't even think they even clocked it. It was just being a gift in our house. And I suppose the same as me being in recovery. They're very well aware that mummy went to rehab. They called it the drinking hospital.
Did they?
And they know that I do my meetings,
Yeah,
they know that I'm up here
yeah.
with my little light on in front of me, and exactly in this surrounding. And I do my meetings a few times a week,
Okay.
and that's what keeps mummy well. And mummy is allergic to alcohol, and that's the truth. I drink alcohol, I have an allergic reaction.
Yeah.
But when it comes to being a singer and a pop star, it's always been there. Faith was AJ hadn't even been born, and Faith came to see us at Wembley.
Oh, did
Um,
you?
in the big reunion. And so it's always been part of Faith's life, definitely. I don't think there's ever been a moment where they've been really shocked seeing us in person at a gig. What I think will continue to shock them is how successful we were. Because at the minute, obviously, I'm just their mum. And they know I was a pop star, and they know I still gig, and they know that I've got these plaques and great. But I think digesting all of it will come over time,
Yeah.
especially when they Google more and they find out more concerts and who we've actually played with. Because I can tell them stories like, oh my God, we partied with Black Eyed Peas and all of these people, and Mariah Carey, we gave her an award. We were with her one day. We went on Bon Jovi's boat. These people, to them, they know who they are, but they're not that famous. They want to hear about Taylor Swift. But I think when they get older, they will see how actually great it was. And I'm waiting for that day. Maybe we go, wow, mom, like that was awesome. But they tell me all the time, whenever they come and watch me at a gig, they're very proud of mummy. And because I did what I did, we're able to have a life where I can buy it. When I don't mean about money, God no, Jesus Christ, all the money stops when you stop becoming a major pop star. Trust me, that's all stopped. But the things that we are able to go to, like the kids' premieres, or
Mm.
going to I don't know, going to one of the theme parks and opening up a ride, and things that money can't buy. I'm able to have those experiences there, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I mean, that is a massive perk of doing what I've done for so many years, to be able to bring opportunities to us as a family that I couldn't buy for them.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm so grateful.
Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and telling me your story. And I wish you nothing but the very best going forward. And good luck with the other girls as well.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and best of luck to you too. You've got a great platform here and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourself. Hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Bye, darling.
Bye-bye. My thanks to Michelle Heaton. If you have not yet subscribed to The Accidental Popstar here on YouTube, I'd be absolutely thrilled if you would please consider, because we have so much more to come in the coming months. That's it, we are done for this episode of The Accidental Popstar. Once again, my thanks to Michelle Heaton for Liberty X, and I'll see you again very soon for our brand new Popstar interview here on The Accidental Popstar. Bye for now.